Okay, welcome once again to Grow This Personal podcast. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube and you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please be sure to do that. I've done some research about my audience and I found out that a lot of people listen to this podcast and they haven't followed the podcast yet. So if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, be sure to follow this podcast as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. All right. So today we're going to be we have a special guest. Her name is Aja. Um, I hope I pronounced the last name correctly.
Yes, Acha.
Aja. All right. Aja has been a very good friend of mine. We've known us each other way back. I think 2014 or 2013, if I'm correct.
2013.
Yeah, she used to be a client who turned friend. I remember, the transactions we had working on her brand and all, and we meeting for the first time after working a couple of months, and then it went on, to doing other stuff for her when it comes to her a corporate brand, a business brand then. And we've turned to become good friends, and I'm so excited to have conversation with you here on the podcast. Ada, welcome to the show.
Thank you, America. Thank you for having me. Yes, we really, really do go way back
Way
when.
back, right?
And funny enough, when we arrived in Canada, you accommodated us. I had never met your spouse at the time. So it was my first time. And I was thinking of, when I told you we were coming to Saskatchewan, and I was like, should we go to Regina or Saskatchewan? You were like, let me just tell you, come to Regina. I was like, okay. And, you opened up your home to us, accommodated us for, I think, 4 days, 3-4 days when we came. And, yes, it's honestly been wonderful. Also, seeing you very consistent over the years. When I met you, you were in Yabaden in your office, and your book, I won't forget the name, was Stand Out or Get Lost. Yes. And you've always been about, building a brand, building a personal brand. And your message has been consistent, so you didn't just fall out from nowhere. This is something that you've been building precept on precept, till now that you're here. And it's an honor knowing you. And I'm so proud to be associated with you and everything you're doing. And thank you for having me on today.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting that, Ada. But thank you. It's an honor. I'm always thrilled when I have conversations with great minds like yourself. And today we're going to be having, I believe, an interesting conversation, and not just interesting, but one I believe it's going to be almost like a legacy, because this is something that's going to stay here, with time immemorial, and it's going to be of impact to people who will be watching, listening to today's episode. So Adele, before I jump into conversations, maybe do a little bit introduction about yourself. I'm still going to do that, in the later production, but tell us a little bit about you, for the audience.
Okay, well, that question is always a very weighty question. When they say, tell me about yourself, sometimes you're wondering, what part should I tell? So if you're going for a job interview, sometimes we make the mistake to think they're asking us about the personal details of our lives. Meanwhile, what they want to know is your career, tell me about you. That's what they want to know. But I think that because of the kind of conversation we're going to have today, I'll probably just, give a good context of who am I. So who is Ada? Okay, so Ada, like my name entails, I'm the first daughter of my parents. I have one younger brother, just 2 children. And I'm just laying that foundation because I think somewhere along the line, I will speak a little more about it. I read law at Enugu State University in Nigeria. I graduated in 2004. I went to law school. I was called to the bar in 2007, and I practiced law. Most of my legal career was in-house in a major oil and gas company then in Nigeria. I also did have lots of stints with entrepreneurship, which is actually what took me to Emeka eventually. And I just wasn't that kind of person. I'm a very resourceful person. I always try to see what I can do with the little things I have around me and make the best out of them, So I was always selling something, doing something, and then someone's like, why not organize yourself a little, man? That's how I met Emeka. But so my background is in law. I did lots of corporate and commercial law. Had a bit in human rights when I worked in a law firm before I moved in-house. I also help. Okay, so now I also do image consulting for people. I haven't built it out into a business, but I just found that from my young days, I always knew, as a young girl, I always knew the right colors of clothes to mix and all that. People see me every time, I'm like, Ada, you have money to be buying new dresses. I'm like, no, it's just the same things I have, but I just know how to mix things up. So that's another skill that came easy to me. And so I do image consulting for people. So people will call, what do I wear? What do you think will flatter my figure? So I do image consulting, and I think it goes beyond even dressing, even down to the way you talk and carry yourself and all that. I attended CEIBS, China English International Business School, China Europe International Business School, CEIBS. I did an entrepreneurial program there for about a year, and I got so that kind of like gave me practical skills towards entrepreneurship. And then along the line, I also had to become a grief recovery counselor, which I will talk about what put me that way. But I'm also a grief recovery counselor, and I also am a family mediator. I'm kind of like doing my training now for collaborative family law. And in Canada here, I'm an articling student. Well, because when you move to Canada as a lawyer, you have to go through another round of requalification, and I'm at the final stage of it. So I'm kind of like a student lawyer. But yeah, that's it about me.
You see why oftentimes I like my guests to talk a little bit about yourself, because sometimes the profile I get to read later on is different from what you say. You're saying a lot, like more deeper stuff than what I'm going to even share later on. But thank you for that introduction, Ada. Let's go into a little bit about conversation today. I wanted to, for my guest, and because of the nature of this podcast, which is personal growth, I like to always go talk about the journey of my guest, and give them an opportunity to talk about what is it that we need to know, as the audience. What do we need to know about you, and where you have been, right? What do we need to know to get a context of where you have been and where you are now? Are there things that we need to understand about your journey to where you are now?
Okay, well, good question. Like, that's another very broad question. But I will say that my life has been very eventful and has been a very interesting one. Did you introduce the topic, or I should talk about it?
No, I mean, just
okay.
Go
so
ahead.
When Emeka asked me, sent me, he said that I want to have you on my feature in my podcast. There was something that we were having a chit chat about, and he's like, I want to talk to you about. I want you to come on my podcast. And then we agreed on a topic, and then we changed it to today's topic. And the topic of today is dealing with hard times. I think Emeka will frame it properly.
Yeah.
So in that context, I will tell you the journey of my life and what you need to know. So so I went to school in Enugu. Most of my life, I grew up as an only child. Up until I was 13, my mom had my younger brother, and then it became two of us. But then imagine a 13-year-old with a little baby brother. We couldn't connect. I remember most times I would grow up and we'll go to people's houses. I want to stay back because I always wanted to have someone. I felt lonely and bored. Of course, my parents would do all they can to keep me company, buy me toys, but they didn't spoil me. My mom raised me as though she had 15 children and I was expendable, But now I see that all of those kind of training has made me the kind of person I was. She never overindulged me. They never gave me too much than I needed. I got trashed when I did the wrong thing, and when I went to military school, my parents sent me to an Air Force secondary school. All my mom's friends called and told her, "You're crazy. Why would you send your only child to a military school? She can die there." I literally thought my parents hated me. But I went to Air Force comprehensive school in Ibadan. I finished, and then I went to Essex and I read law, and then I finished. So I had my little brother. We're trying to build our relationship. By the time I was in university, this poor boy was in private school, because I started university when I was 15. And then I finished, and, I had lots of hopes for my future. I had hopes that I was going to have many children. I had hopes I was going to meet this guy who will sweep me off my feet. I had hopes that we will do this and do that. And I was also a Christian girl. You know, I also had this belief that, and which is true, enough, when you marry someone, you're going to bring good luck to the person. Like, it's just something that they always do. I know one of the cultures in Nigeria, when if new bride comes into a family, they will even wash your feet and say to you that as you're coming, you're going to bring good luck. Anyway, I got married in 2009. I met my husband in university. He was in University of Nigeria in Soka, Enugu campus. I was in Enugu in Essence. So that's how we met and we became friends. And then we got married, and just a month and into my marriage to my husband, he lost his job. You know, no new couple ever anticipates that that kind of thing will happen. But my husband lost his job. And I'm sharing it because he's also quite active on, you know, people call him to speak about it. And he's now in this place where he's comfortable, because I don't believe that our experiences are things we should be ashamed of or things that we should hide. We share them so that other people can find hope and inspiration, you know. So for about 2 years, he tried his hands on different things. And I was also there trying to also do my own bit. And how old was I? I was a young lady, and you know, life was just happening. Along the line, we had our first child, and then somewhere along the line, he got another job, and you know, we just kept on with our lives. I was also trying to build my own career at my workplace. You know, at that time, I started trying different businesses just to augment and supplement my family income. And then I had the second son, and that's more about it. And then, of course, I was enjoying my job up until 2018. Some things happened. You know, prior to that time, my husband had said we should move to Canada. He just felt that my husband is there's a way he is. And he just said, I think things have moved. I think we should move. I think that if we're planning to have our children attend university in Canada in the future, but now there's an opportunity to go now, why not? I didn't think I wanted to go. I wanted to stay back. I was already at the point in my career where I knew I was just about to be company secretary, and I'm like, things are just, this is like the peak. He's like, no, you know, but the things that happened. And so it made it easier for me to follow along and come to Canada. And I came to Canada, I had to start all over again. So from almost being a chief legal officer, which was technically what I was at a big multinational, I come to Canada, and then I had to go back to my career. When I came, I wasn't in a mental state to actually start doing my requalifying. You know, we had just suffered a tragedy. And as much as I was struggling to come to terms with what was happening, I just found that I didn't want to work. I had enough savings, and I'm like, I'm just going to stay indoors. But the more I stayed at home, the more I found myself slipping into a hole, and I found out I was getting worse off. And all the gains I had made since the tragedy had happened in 2018, and I was here, we arrived in Canada January 2019. By April, I found out that all the little gains I had made, it was barely a year that happened. The tragedy happened, and I just found out that I needed to challenge my mind to do something else. And that's when I picked up my NCAs, and then I started studying. So NCAs are just basically the exams lawyers need to take to requalify. I found a community of people I could study with, and then that's the journey I've been on. So I joined a firm as a legal assistant, and I started working. And I never for one day looked at it to say, oh, how could I, who used to be, and I will talk about some of those things along the line, but that's basically the career path and my life. I think this is what I need to say to get us to the point where we can continue talking.
Okay. Okay, awesome. I mean, you said quite a lot, especially from the standpoint of being able to start all over again, and embrace the fact that oftentimes people you had to deal with, and I believe you dealt with that part of the ego, where people feel like starting all over again. What would people say? How would people respond to the fact that, hey, this you were here and then you were starting all over again? But also one of the things you mentioned there was the tragedy you faced. So I don't know how are you comfortable talking about it in detail? And
yes, I can.
Yeah, and because why I want you to share about, I feel, you share about this is because, part of, I believe that the essential part of personal growth is oftentimes coming when it comes from a place of adversity, of tragedy, and then we now begin to turn a new leaf and begin to develop some sort of superpower from that event. And some people don't come out of that event in terms of their mental state, being able to push again, being able to forge a new path. Some people get stuck there, but some people come out of it, thrive, and begin to use that experience to help others. So let's go back to dealing with that hard time, that strategy. What was it like at that time, going through, I don't know if you want me to say,
Yeah, I'll talk about it. So
yeah,
I mean, it's
so
fine. I'll say what happened.
yeah, share with us, give us a context to how you dealt with it at that moment.
Okay.
And what were the things that you had to do to survive at that time?
Okay. So in 2018, now this is someone who, so in 2018, it was Easter week of 2018, March 27th. I had this friend who had been telling me for some time that the children needed to, have a playtime together, a play date. And I said, okay. So I dropped my kids off at hers. This is someone whom I would trust with my kids anytime, any day. It's a very hands-on mother, She's this someone who can, she can build a table from a tree. She's that kind of person. She roasts a whole pig. Like she's amazing. So I took my children to her and to their old school, and then she picked them up from there. And I closed from work at 5 p.m. to go and pick my children up. And then I got to the house, went upstairs, and I'm like, the children. And she's like, that they are downstairs. I was like, so I looked, I saw that her housekeeper was around with her. And I just said, so there's nobody with them? She was like, no, that she just said, let her come up to give her child some medication and all. I just got alarmed. I started running. And I ran downstairs and ran towards the pool because it was it's a multinational that they're expatriates kind of. And so it's a multinational premises, residential quarter. So it has a very big pool. Only for me to get there. And then I only saw the head of one of my surviving son, the one I'm with. I couldn't find the other person. I looked and I saw that there was the silhouette of a body at the bottom of the pool. So while I was rushing towards the pool to jump in, she was also running behind me. So we kind of like both fell in at the same time almost. And then lo and behold, of course, it was my son. And we brought him out of the pool. And, I called for the driver to bring the car quickly. We were doing CPR, everything that we knew, but the child was unresponsive. And so we took him to the hospital and they did everything they could to resuscitate him, but he had passed away. And the dad and him exceptionally close because I had that child at the time when my husband was also going through his own career issues. So my husband was home with him all the time. They look exactly the same and they were so close. I didn't know how to call my husband to tell him anything. And he was at home and he had been quite ill because he had some health challenges at the time. So I looked up. I couldn't stay in while they were resuscitating this child. I went into my car. I was praying. I said, God, please remember me today. What will I say? How do I explain this kind of thing? Please remember me. And I thought about everything. And most of my life as a young girl in university, I was quite involved in fellowship and all that. And not just fellowship, I loved God. He was my everything. My life was built around, service to God. And I was like, God, remember me, please. Remember all of these things. But while I was in the car making that prayer, I remember so deeply, I had this nudge in my spirit that said to me, you will forgive this lady and this family and you will pray for them. And I was like, I'm asking you about my child. You're telling me something else. This was just a conversation going on in my spirit. Anyway, I looked up and I saw my friend rushing out from the hospital. Apparently, she had been rolling herself on the gravel. Her skin had lacerated. She was just in shambles. because she knew the doctor had told her that the child had gone. So I called her into my car and I sat her down and I told her that whatever has happened, I want you to know right here, right now, that I forgive you and I will never hold anything against you. She didn't believe it. She was like, you don't know what you're saying. Because she's, her husband is Greek. They're expatriates, right? She's like, Ada, where I come from, that's not. I said, no, I know what I'm telling you. I want you to know right here, right now, that I forgive you, you know. And I embraced her and she broke down and we cried together and I prayed for her in the car. And then I called my husband and I told him that, look at what had happened. And my husband started coming. His friend brought him. By the time he got to the hospital, my husband helped me and said, Ada, we will forgive this couple.
Wow.
We hadn't even conversed, but that's what he told me. We'll forgive this family, you know. Long story cut short, that was how our first son, Jordan, passed away at age 9. You know, very, very boisterous, lively boy. You know, I couldn't believe that kind of thing could happen. So now I'm here with my faith. And so now let me even say something about values, because I believe that our life's values, it is from your values that you respond to the issues of life. You know, whatever life throws at you, it is the values that you have that will determine your response. So you know how people say that the choices determine the consequences. That's true. Nobody has the luxury to make a choice and choose the consequence. If you decide to go on consistently on a diet, on an unhealthy diet, you are going to end up with a consequence of maybe obesity, diseases, and, you know, all sorts of complications. Does not mean that people who choose to live a healthier life cannot get that outcome. But it is the rule that if you make certain choices, you will reap certain consequences. That is the same way it is with life. Never be surprised at the way you respond to issues. Just go back and check what your value systems are. You will know. And by values, I mean the principles that guide your life, not things you value. So I'll give you an example. Some people think that you ask somebody, what do you value? The person will tell you, oh, I like money. You know, I like money. But that's not a value system. You know, one of the ways I know what values are. A value is something people cannot take away from you. Things you value are things that people can take away. Freedom, someone can say, oh, freedom of speech, I value, like people can say whatever. But if you're in an oppressive country, you might not be able to say what you want to say. Someone can take it away from you. So that is not a value. Values will come down to the principles that guide you. Kindness, compassion, courage, resilience, commitment, you know, those things. So from the place of values, you respond to life's issues. Okay. So we took our child home, we buried our child, and people will come and visit us. Believers, Christians, they are angry when they hear what happened. And they can't believe it. The day of my son's funeral, the couple attended. People had heard that our son died in someone's house. They attended, but they didn't know who he was because nobody made a spectacle. But our close friends and family who knew, because they came and saw us and took a cue from the way we responded. So even when people were angry, even people who were senior believers, like people who I look up to, and I don't blame them, anybody will be angry. This is a choice we chose to make. It doesn't mean that you can't choose otherwise. But I thought about it also. Every time, you remember all those movies you watch, you see people in court talking about recounting. So on the 15th of this day, what happened? Then they start all over again. Oh, that day, then you're in that circle. You can't move on. I did that for my sanity. My husband did that for his sanity. Well, I'm a lawyer. We could have prosecuted it. Of course, the police came to the hospital to ask, we want to press charges. We're like, no, we don't want anything like that. So like I said, people were very upset. Why didn't you? Why? But this was a choice we made, you know, and we forgave that family. When they came for the funeral, people embraced them. So all my friends who knew what had happened saw them and hugged them. And that lady, I think, and I believe that she received 3/4 of the forgiveness that she needed, because there's nothing like being able to extend grace and mercy to people. You know, talk is cheap, but it's easy to say anything. Like the way people will say, oh, I love you, like a young girl meets a guy, I love him. No, life must test that love. Every love must be tested. Everything we say out of our mouth must be tested. And if tribulations and trials break you, perhaps you didn't really have the strength you professed you had or you thought you had. Because it is the fire that reveals the test of gold. It is the fire that reveals whether what you bought in the market was pure gold or whether it was aluminium and tin. It is adversity that reveals yourself to you. So anybody can say anything. Oh, anyway, like I said, you respond to issues from your values. So my own personally, what are the values? What are the things I value personally? Kindness, top on my list. Kindness, being able to extend kindness to people because I want to be in a position to receive it. But not because I want to receive it, but because that is my disposition. That is who I am. Those are things I have tried to fashion my life around. Resilience, being able to bounce back in the face of adversity. Not allowing a situation drown you. Not allowing a situation define you. Courage, being able to do it even when you're afraid, even when you don't have the strength. You know, one thing I've noticed, we always wait for the right feelings to come. No, do the thing you need to do. The feelings will meet you along the way. So I draw a lot of inspiration from the Holy Book. Okay, I'm a Christian and unashamed so, but I don't put it in people's faces because I believe that our lives should be a literal book, a testament that people should be able to see. In fact, in one of the books of the Bible, it admonishes the women and saying that, let's assume you married a man who was not a believer. Without saying a word to the person, by observing you, it can make so much change. It can even combat the person. I feel that a lot of times people are very noisy, trying to say what they are not. A lot of people profess a lot of things, but are not practitioners. Our lives are powerful testaments. So now, courage is being able to, in the face of fear, I don't feel like doing it, but I do it. Okay? And then along the line, the strength comes. There's a lady in Nigeria I like to listen to, Omi Oshikoya. She wrote a book called, she has this conference she holds every year called Do It Afraid Conference. And she talks about how she started doing things while she was afraid. There are never going to be perfect conditions in life. Never. So the Holy Book tells us that he that observeth the wind will not sow. If you are a farmer, you come out to plant your seed today, the wind is blowing strong, you go back inside. Tomorrow you come out, the sun is too hot, you go back. Another day you come out again, the birds are all over the place. Why do you think people develop scarecrows? The people who thought about a way to keep birds away from eating their seeds. So it is not the adversity that is happening. How are you going to adjust to it? You know? And so that is, the way those things, that's how you should see those things. So do it in spite of the way you feel. It's not about whether the weather is good or not. Do what you need to do. For example, a relationship between a man and a spouse is failing. So family restoration is is an area I'm very passionate about. And I have, I mentor lots of young ladies who are newly married. And even people who have gone fire. I speak in, people invite me to speak at marriage seminars a lot. And I also practice family law, right? So that's an area I'm very, 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 very particular and very passionate about. A lot of times when a love tank is empty, it's because people are not depositing the right words in it. So when you don't have to feel every morning. You don't wake up every morning feeling like in love with your spouse. Right. But you can do acts of kindness. And as the person is appreciating what you are doing, the feelings come back. You get it?
That's right.
Anyway,
that's right.
So courage, doing things in spite of fear. Compassion, being moved to act, being able to, compassion and empathy are side by side. Empathy is kind of like putting yourself in someone's shoes and, how would I want to have been treated if I was me? Try to, being the love you have for something, the concern you have moves you to do something. Family. And I will also explain why family has been the center of my life, sometime in the podcast. And then like I said, my faith. So these 7 things I would say are values that have guided me. And so the reason, and then forgiveness, I don't keep things to heart. I don't bear grudges. It's not every time it's easy, but I choose not to do it because I find that I can maintain my sanity when I let people go and allow them, because I believe that the earth is powerful and it will deal with the people who don't want to change their ways. But I don't have to be involved in trying to find retribution for that person. Okay. So I don't know if I've gone off tangent. But
No, no,
just
you
to
haven't.
answer, okay, so just to tie everything in together, that we were able to forgive that family was because I don't believe the Holy Spirit was asking me or God was leading us to do something that we already haven't, that didn't line up with our own personal values. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. Some people think it's just like when you say, another thing I will explain. Some people get confused when he says, I will bring into your remembrance everything that you read. But if new information is not going to come, it still has to be from what you already know. Okay. And so that's how we were able to extend forgiveness to that family and pick up the pieces of our lives. There was a time, a week after that incident, I saw the person posted on Facebook. Hi! And my body was vibrating. And my mind said to me, Shebi, you were the one feeling holy and you forgive somebody, but the person has moved on. But another thought said to me, is this what you want to keep doing? If you have let somebody go, let that person go. If you have forgiven, it doesn't mean that they won't be hurt. So that's the thing about life. People think that for your life to have meaning, for your life to be fulfilled, it will be a life that is devoid of difficulties and hard times. In the words of this actor in Nigeria, Zebediah, he'll tell you, foul. That can never happen. You have to keep fighting. See, you don't stroll your way through life. You battle through life. You fight through life. There are different things that we are fighting at different points. My family, we've gone through from periods where no job, and those are times where, and you know that men get their definition, their meaning from work. When a man, the worst thing you can do to a man is to deprive him, or when a man is unemployed and he can't provide for his family, it's like castrating the person. And you find that men are unusually touchy when they're in those kind of zones. How do you manage that time? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So, but many waters. And that's the thing about life. You're going to keep going through battles and battles, but it is from the place of your values that you respond to the battles of your life. Let me say one other one. I got a job at a place. I resumed at the spot at that office, and it was hostility from day one. I came back home and I will weep. I will cry and I will cry. I told my husband that I can't take it anymore. I think I want to throw in a towel. He's like, no, you have to, Ada, you're not a quitter. Anyway, the people were nasty. It was here in Canada. And it was just like, but there was a hope attached to my pursuit. It was that, it was such that if you take on this role as an assistant, maybe along the line you can get one step closer to being a lawyer. So I left the nice place where I worked and I took this other place, and I was having a lot of difficulties, and I was so miserable. Now, I had a choice to respond to people the way they were treating me or take another route. One fine day, I sat to myself and I said, how do I deal with a work in this environment? How do I get these people on my side? Who are you, Ada? So someone came and did something to me I didn't like, and I almost lashed out. But I said, no, you are gradually becoming this person. That is not who you are. You strive to be kind. You are not a quitter because you are resilient. You have courage to show love even when you are getting things, even when you are not getting it back. And from that place, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to keep responding to these people in love, even though they're not treating me right. Do you know that eventually all those issues caved? Now, those same people, we ended up becoming friends. I didn't have to quit. I'm still closer. I'm still now literally smelling my destination. Do you understand? All because I chose to live by the things that I profess. I said it again, talk is cheap. Anybody can say anything, but it is when life tries you and tests you, it will reveal to you who you are. If you so that's how I see these things, and that's how I was able to deal with this situation. Just because I'm dealing with people who I just didn't want to give too much details. But I find that even as immigrants, we come into a workplace, people are trying to understand you. People want to know you, but people are afraid because everybody fears what they don't understand. A lot of people guard themselves. They don't know what to say to you. But you might sit down there and conclude that, everything is because I'm a person of color. No, not everything is racist. Not everything is a race issue. A lot of us can't even accept correction at work because we think, oh, the person correcting is because I'm a person of color, I'm an immigrant. No, but it's a mindset. But if you choose to respond from a place of higher values, eventually you will get the results that you're looking for, you know. And so those are the things that have guided me. So whether it's career seasons of drought in my career, or in my family life, or in my raising my child, dealing with my spouse, and even other people, I find that at the end of the day, it is my values that help me respond to the issues of life. So it is not what happened to you, like they always say. It is how you respond. And how do you respond? You respond from the place of your values. If you don't have respect for people, you will not be able to respond properly. Now, I'm not saying people don't make mistakes, because you see, as we also grow older, life teaches us lots of lessons, you know, and we can change the things that we value. But these are the things that matter to me, and that is how I've lived my life.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And I mean, this is a masterclass on its own. And I mean, I really appreciate you for sharing this. One of the things that caught my mind in all you were saying was the fact that values is how you respond to adversity. And I think that is so profound, because when we understand that concept, it helps us to begin to take our values more seriously, to deepen our values, you know, even improve on those values, and how we, you know, how we use that to interact with the world. And yeah, that's a big a major story you shared there. Like, I mean, what is really interesting to me is how you've moved, how you've taken it, not moved on, but how you've been able to adapt and be able to find grace. You know, like you said, how you forgive that family and all. It's inspiring. Like, it's inspiring. But I want to ask this question around, because oftentimes when people face adversity, the adversity itself oftentimes is not much of the concern or the issues why people don't survive or don't thrive, or don't come out of it, you know, and they allow the adversity to take a whole toll on them. It's not necessarily the adversity alone, but oftentimes the public reaction to that adversity, the public criticism to that adversity. So I think you've touched on this a little bit, but I want you to do, you know, talk a little bit more on how you were able to deal with the external environment, the public criticism, the public view on the adversity you faced. How were you able to deal with that?
Okay, so good question, Emeka. So one of the things that they say is a popular proverb we have in, I think it's African, I think it's also Nigerian. They say you can't stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can stop it from perching on your head.
Right.
I do not, as a matter of personal principle, I strive to ensure that I am able to separate myself from the opinion that people have about me. And I'll tell you how I do it. So what you're asking basically is like the mindset, you know, how are you able to see? You can't respond to external pressure without knowing who you are first.
Right.
It starts with a discovery of who you are. And then when you know who you are and you are grounded in who you are as a person, now it doesn't now matter what is happening around you. So when people had their own impression about, people were talking about, oh, I couldn't take this, or, you know, how did some people even still today still look at us and feel like, oh, these people must have been very foolish. What are they feeling like? No, you should have gone for the jugular. But I can't control people's opinion about me. And that's the truth. And that is you see, a lot of times, you know, these days we talk about a lot of people who, because of the way social media is, lots of people, like they'll say that many people derive their meaning and by how many likes, how many people like their post, you know, some of those kind of things. There's too much what I call it, attention on the external. But I think that knowing who you are as a person, grounds you to the extent that no matter what people are thinking outside, you know that the opinion of other people does not define you.
Right.
Emeka, there are many people who you would have told tomorrow that I want to continue with do my growth is personal. I read your posts online. I see the stories you share on LinkedIn, and I get inspired by them. You say a lot of things about, do you know what it means to tell someone stand out or get lost? Everybody wants to. It is a resilient, strong person, the person who doesn't care about external environments, that can decide to stand out and get lost. Because the normal thing everybody wants to do is toe the path of safety, toe the path of conformity. But when we lose our authenticity, and that's the struggle, fighting for your authentic self versus public acceptance. But there are no two of anybody. We are all originals, made in the image of God Almighty, with our own unique talents and unique ways of expression. And I won't change that for anybody. So I don't have any problem with how if somebody views it to say, the way it is a foolish thing for anyone to think that everybody will love you or accept you for who you are, or accept the decisions or the choices you make. And that's why you have to be responsible enough to say to yourself that I will authentically pursue who I am. So now let me rephrase your question. What kind of mindsets did I have that helped me deal with all of these things? The first thing is, when you are in a period of crisis or hard times come, who do you turn to? Knowledge. They say that knowledge puffs people up. Like when people have a lot of knowledge about things, they get proud. The most brilliant person in the class is the person who may not always be the one who's willing to share. But you see, you cannot be helped beyond the level of knowledge that you know. So when I lost my son, I was the next morning I woke up, I couldn't believe what had happened. Of course, we kept him home till we eventually buried, took him to the mortuary after a few days. And long story I don't want to get into, but we eventually buried him. And after this child had been buried, the stark reality of my loss, I had to face it. When those things happen initially, a lot of people will come around to help you. The first thing you need when you're going through crisis is people, community. They are like first aid to an accident injury. What the presence of people will do is to control the hemorrhaging, the bleeding. They come and offer you words of comfort and all that. Similarly, it could be in your career. Are you in a community of professionals that have more insight in an issue? Because there's no new problem you're going to face in life. Every kind of tragedy, disaster, calamity that can happen, someone else has gone through it. Or you need to find the people who have walked through it. Of all the people who visited us when we lost our child, the most impactful person was the one who came and said to us, I have been there. When I heard it, I just sat still. And he said to us, and that's the power of a story. And that's why we share, we talk. Because someone else will be listening who has lost a child and is wondering, can I find happiness again? Can I find meaning again? It could be someone who has lost his job. Someone like my husband can say to you, I've been there. Emeka, you also have been there. You've walked the path of losing employment. And the story will be more powerful to someone else who's lost his job than me, who has never lost an employment, come and try to comfort the person. No, but that's why the Holy Book enjoins us to be able to comfort other people through the same comfort that we've received. And that is how you profit from your bitter experiences. So what community of people do you have? You need people to come around you. It could be professionally. A young lawyer, you're in your first year of practice, you make a mistake. Somebody goes to report you to the law society. Of course, your whole life will be thrown into disarray because you are wondering, I might lose my license, I might. The worst thing you can do is isolate yourself because you don't have the knowledge to think yourself out of that problem. You need to tap into a higher knowledge base. And who are they? Community. That's why professionals should not be hiding themselves and saying, no, I can go it on my own. You can't. A lot of the inroads I have made, even in my legal journey in Canada here, is because I chose to uncomfortably put myself out. When I started attending CBA, so CBA is Canadian Bar Association, when I started attending Saskatchewan branch programs, I was still writing my NCAs, but I was sneaking. Sometimes I'm the only person of color that's there. Some people might say hi. So for my first 2 times, I don't think anybody even said a word to me. but I know what I'm there for. If you don't have a focus where you want to go to, anything will derail you.
That's right.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how, so that community of people are able, and that's how you meet lawyers. I'll tell you, during my first year, I got 10 people report me, but see. This was how I handled it. The minute light comes in, darkness dispels. The minute higher information enters your spirit finds the materials it needs to start reconstructing hope and changing your perspective about that issue. That's what community of people, because you will find somebody who knows, who has the answer. I don't know how to explain those things. So you need a community of people, career community, family. It could even be people going through issues with dealing with their young children. You've moved to Canada. Suddenly your children that used to listen to you are not listening to you anymore. But there are people here who have lived longer than you are in Canada and their children are behaving properly. Are you in such a community? I don't believe in isolating. See, the first thing and that is one of the things we have to understand, the mind needs, the way our mind works, it is designed to keep you in a state of comfort. The mind doesn't like anything that disrupts it. So once you have a tragic situation, lost a job, whatever happens, the first thing you do is retreat. But if you don't know that you need help, you will remain in that place. And because you don't have more knowledge, you think that's the end. And from there, people slip into other things like depression and ultimately suicide. Because in isolation, darkness has strength. But when you expose it to many, light will enter. So the Holy Book tells us, in a multitude of counselors, or a multitude of counselors, there is safety. So community. Don't run away from community. The second thing, so that's one of the things that helped me a lot, the kind of people, the quality of people I had access to. And another thing is, like I said, which I've also touched, knowledge. When you are going through a problem, what books are you reading? So when I woke up and I found out that everybody has now gone home, the community of people have left because people have to go back and face their own lives.
Yeah.
So they leave you. Now they've given you raw materials. You need to build on what you've heard. I started going online to start looking, typing, lost child. There's something I didn't search for online, and I'm actually working on a website. I think I want to. It might be something. I think I'm trying to finish it before I turn 40. Just a resource center for people who have lost children to go to, where you can find a lot of things in one place, because there's lots of information online. It's just something I'm passionate about, because I never believed that. Hey, that is my teeth. Oh, I'll be able to laugh, and laugh a very hearty laugh. When you're in a hole like that, you can't believe. You just want to shut down the windows and remain in, like I said, darkness. So I went on and I started looking for information. How do people deal with loss? What are the stages of grief? Can I ever be happy again after losing a child? That's something I didn't type. If you saw my browser then, because I needed more. Thank God I found good messages from, seasoned preachers. I also listened to, even not new age teachings per se, but I also listened to some, some of these Indian philosophers who are able to, they philosophize about life a lot, and they're able to rearrange. Osho is one of them. Rearrange your perspective about things. I saw some of those things. Then I found books, about grief. I read books about, in fact, there was a particular one I read. I tried to remember the name. It was a lady who almost drowned, but she was able to be revived, restored. But the lessons, by the time I read those stories, read books from people who are not, I started finding the food that my soul needed to help itself. So after the community, you need knowledge. How much have you invested in knowledge, building mental capacity in that area of deficit? So if you've lost work, what books are you reading? Maybe about learning a new skill. Even starting with the fact of dealing with the shame, because shame comes anytime loss occurs. Okay. There's shame. Why was it me? Maybe I'm the worst. You start talking down on yourself, because that is how the mind works. And that's same way my mind was keeping me at home, and I didn't start my NCs. So I had to give my mind something else to work on, and that's what you need to do. If not, your mind will keep you trapped in that place where tragedy occurred, and first of all, your life is buried there. But if you give it something new to start with, and you force your mind to start to reimagine because of the new knowledge you're gaining, you start fleshing out the details. The third thing is you need a soul diet. I changed the diet of my soul. And now when I say soul diet, so the Holy Book could tell us things like, he said, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it proceeds the issues of life. Now, how do you guard your heart? Because your heart will consist of your mind, your emotions, your reasoning faculties. How do you guard it? By being mindful of your eye gate and your ear gate. What you see, what you listen to in those times when you are dealing with crisis periods is critical, because they say whatever you pay attention to will give you direction. And it's true. You've lost your job and all you're reading is how the economy is tanking, blah, 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 blah. You're not giving your soul the food it needs to build the strength to bounce back. Rather, you're depleting your resources. So so I had to pay attention to what I was listening to, at that time. Paid attention to the things I was watching. I don't want to watch anything that reminded I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Those are practical things that you need to steer you out of crisis. One of the things I would say is none of us have control over the kind of challenges we will have. I never in this my life thought that I would lose a child, or I have to bury a child. And then, I planned that at the age of 30, at age 30, I'd have finished having all my children and all that. It is not about the plans you make, because life is an expert in detours. It will bring you detours and detours and detours and detours, but you can only respond from the place of your values and then from a mindset that shifts. And another thing that helped me is spirituality and faith. That is where I draw my own strength from. I go through, from the lessons I learned from the Bible, I think about practical ways to practicalize these things. And of course, the word of God also had a word or two for those of us who have lost people who we love. There's the hope of the afterlife, then, and so many other things, and then perspective. But I will say one other thing too that really, really helped me. One of the days I was struggling with this whole thing, I remember a thought came into my spirit about life. Do you know? And the way that question went to me was, Ada, do you think that, did you own this child? And I'm like, the child was my child. I said, no. Did you own it? I said, well, I can't say I owned him, because that's a different individual. He said, yes, because everything you have in life is a gift. You're a steward of the gifts. If the person who gave you a gift saw it fit to retrieve that gift from you, what do? You came to this life naked. You will die alone. I'm not going to die the same day my husband dies. Maybe, yes, maybe no. But even if I did, the point is that life is per head. You have to take responsibility for your own life. Your own children are children. They're extensions of you, but they have their own life to live.
Right.
It is a gift. And everything about life is about stewarding the things that we have. We don't own anything. And honestly, when I saw it from that perspective, it really, really lessened my pain. When we were moving to Canada and we were selling our possessions, my house was beautiful in Nigeria. I had lovely items because I like interior design and all that. As people were carrying the things away, and I was like, I just felt like life was just seeping out of my body because it was less than a year our son had passed away. And then we're also making that difficult move to Canada. Like, our son died in March. Our PR came out in September. From November, people were coming to the house to carry things out. So this is barely 7 months. Everything I've worked for is just, then of course, most importantly, my child, which is why I was saying that money is not a value. That time when our son died, Emeka, even if we needed to get a air ambulance to fly that child out of Nigeria, in Canada, people won't understand because we have air ambulances that will evacuate in an emergency, but in Nigeria, it's not there. It costs a lot of money. Even if that was what we required, we would have done it. But the way this thing happened, it didn't even give us an opportunity to even spend one dime. How do you think your life will be if all you have been pursuing is just money? Because when the real issues of life come, money can't save you. A musician in Nigeria recently lost his child. Davido's son died. And I read through people's insensitive comments online and I was like, human beings. But it's only the person who has lost that understands. Do you know how that man would have felt? Davido's father, he's from a very wealthy family. Not talk of his own even personal wealth. But the way that child died, he didn't even allow him, give him the opportunity to even spend $1 to restore that child's health. So I'm asking the question again. What is your value? Are you chasing and building your life, chasing something that when the real issues of life come, you might not be able to save you? What can a man give in exchange for his soul? Just flip the coin. What can you give in exchange? If you spend your whole life, and that's why values, family, spending family time, community, with friends, with people. If you don't have all those things and all you're pursuing is career and success and all of those things, when that career and success, when something else comes that you need the love of people around you, if you haven't invested in it, what are you going to do? Another thing that helps us is goodwill. So goodwill is the sum total of all the favors that people owe you. And when you come to cash your goodwill is when crisis comes. Because it is always better to leave people better than you met them. I rather be cheated than cheat someone. But you see, when you have goodwill and you have that time when our son died, people were coming from all kinds of places I never knew to love, to show us love, to care for us with food, with words of, that's when you start drawing on those things. If you are someone that hasn't invested in relationships, people might call you and tell you, sorry, we will try and come, but I don't know how to explain it. Even in accounting, there's a portion for goodwill. And what is the value of that name? What does your name do in the hearts of people? When people think about you or talk about you, what is the general consensus opinion? Because in as much as people might want to say, oh, this person, whatever, people might say, but I remember one time this lady spoke up for me when these things happened. I remember this lady gave up a chair for me when this happened. I remember. Keep sowing your seed. You don't know which one will germinate for you. But that's one of the things I don't see people talk about these days, because we live in a very me, self-centric era. People are looking for new knowledge. No, let's not even pursue the new. Let's even go back to the old basic principles, the old fundamentals, So those are 5 things I said. I said community. I said knowledge. I said your soul diet. I talked about goodwill too. All of these things are intertwined points, but I think that they're just practical things that help you, in difficult times. The issue is not whether tough times will come, is when it comes. One last story. Remember the story of that, what's his name? In Egypt, when there was a famine. I think that's another story from the Holy Book too. And the king had a dream. I think Pharaoh had a dream of farming, and this guy came and interpreted his dream. One of the things I noticed was God didn't say to Joseph, I am going to, delay the famine, or I'm going to, there will be no famine coming. He said, no, go and prepare for it. He didn't say, I'm going to change it. Go and prepare for it. I'm not going to take it away. There will be 7 years of plenty and 7 lean years. And that is how it is for everybody. We are going to keep moving in between seasons of leanness and fatness, but you prepare for the lean times in the times of fat. Okay? That is life. We cannot change that order. That is the way it's going to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of the popular phrase that you prepare for war when there's peace, right? And
exactly.
What you've just shared with us is a wake-up call. Like I believe this is a wake-up call, because when it comes to personal growth, professional growth, a lot of times we look at the outcomes. We look at, okay, what are we chasing? We're chasing after success, or after a promotion or something out there. But oftentimes we miss out on the essential values and foundations that actually make us who we are, because a job can be taken away from you. Like you said, you never expected the loss of your son. But at the end of the day, it came back to what are the values, the goodwill, the things you have built that matters, the relationship with your spouse, the relationship with your other son, the community you've built around you that would sustain you, in that times of adversity. So I think this is a wake-up call for for me, myself as well, because I mean, we can be all busy, looking for the next shiny object, looking for the next goal. I mean, 2023 is going to be, in a few days, and some of us are setting goals already, right? Putting plans in place and all of that.
Inclusive.
I mean, and that is good, but we must not lose sight of what is important, what matters most. And oftentimes is those things that are not seen you know, in the public, or in the visible eyes, like things like values, things like building goodwill. I mean, that goodwill part is so key, because I think, you know, let's even talk about um um coping through hard times, because a lot of us, you know, I'm an immigrant. I came into Canada here, settling and all, and you also, and there are people who have gone through, who are probably going through hard times right now.
Yeah.
And you said a lot of things about how to be able to prepare for hard times, and I think I want to let's talk a little bit more about how to then cope, right? For, let's bring the context, people who are probably immigrants in the new country, they've lost their job, or they've just, you know, been they're going through hard times. How can they be, how are they able to cope if, for example, they have not built that goodwill? Let's say, for example, you know, they have been on their own, they've not been a part of, because a lot of time what you find is people are so focused on theirs, on their own, that they're not building a community around them. There's no goodwill. They're not even, because one thing I've always said is that, you know, as much as you're the the measure, the true measure of personal growth or professional growth, is that someone else is growing because you're there. Someone else, you are not, your growth has an impact on someone else. People are growing because you're there. People are, that's, for me, that's the true measure of growth. It's not that you're growing or you're getting promotion. Are other people around you also growing? So let's say for that person who is at that point where they haven't even, you know, built that goodwill, how can they begin to then cope now in a hard time?
Okay, good question. So there are, responding to issues, there are always two sides to coping through anything or responding to anything. One of it is, like we've talked a lot about the internals, you know, and knowing that, what's that book? Is it Robert? What's his name? That Ludlum or something that wrote "Tough times never last, but tough people do."
Too.
First and foremost, you have to start. It starts from inside, then we work it outside. You have to understand that whatever situation you're in is temporary. So let's use nature as an example, because I believe that there's so much we can learn from nature. Now is winter.
Mm.
In the winter time, it's dark, it's cold. We have shorter days and longer nights. Technically, what that is trying to show you is that you need to, your day is ending earlier so you can rest more. It's a time for reflection, and, you know, it's not a time to launch out. What are you launching out in -27? You can't launch out to do anything much. I don't know if you're trying to say, but that's nature. After that, spring will come. We start again sowing seeds. Then summer comes, we harvest. Then autumn comes. Life is in cycles and phases. You have to understand, as an immigrant first, that the struggles that you're going through are normal. You cannot uproot a plant and then plant it in Uganda and expect it to thrive. That's not how it works. Anytime there's uproot, and they even tell that there are certain seasons that is better to uproot and transplant, and certain seasons when you shouldn't do it. So when you move into a new place, you know, one of the things I find immigrants, we do a lot, is we listen to the story of that one person. Maybe he worked in KPMG, who just left from KPMG and came to Canada, and then he just got a parallel role, and then, but that is the exception, it's not the rule. The rule is that you have been transplanted, you have been uprooted from a place of convenience, comfort, where you knew, into a new place. When you put a plant into a new soil, some leaves will fall. It will look shriveled for some time. It needs watering and nurture. Then it will bloom back. So the first thing I'm saying is, you have to, and when you understand that, it gives you the mental resilience you need to start looking for the externals. And I'm going to go to the externals. So learn from nature. Life is in seasons. Nothing blooms forever. Even the flowers, we have perennials, we have annuals, biannuals. Nothing blooms. Even nature abhors it. You can't see something green from January to December. So there are going to be those periods. Embrace it. It is part of life. Second thing we should do as immigrants is, you have been with your community of people all your life. You're in a new land. Go out and make friends with people who are not necessarily from your tribe and culture. They are the ones that know the way the land functions, their perspective and insights that they have. What I find a lot of times is that we stay within our communities. And you see, one thing about immigrant communities is that whatever is the prevailing idea or mindset, everybody will just do it. I'll give you an example. Before I came to Canada, there was this, if you don't attend the school in Canada, we don't have Canadian experience, you won't get a job. And Canadian experience was directly equated to attending a Canadian school, which was not true.
Yeah.
But that was the prevailing idea in many. So you'll find immigrants who just land, they've got to go and take loans to go to do one course or program. Now, how many people are you seeing doing those things? Now, very few. Most people are able to come in, settle down, get a job. Then they realize, okay, I think I need to do this or do that. But not that it's the norm. It's now something that, do you get what I'm trying to? Because people deliberately broke it. So when you only stay with that community, the level of information that you have is restricted to whatever is the prevailing idea there. They say when I go to Rome, behave like the Romans. When you go to Greece, behave like the Greeks. How do you behave like the Romans? By identifying with the Romans. The Holy Book tells us that he that will make friends must first of all be friendly. You have to make efforts. It is not easy, but this is where you have come to live. This is now your new home. You need to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
So it is important. You could even be with your neighbors, starting with even a hello with somebody, starting up a conversation with someone at the pharmacy. You see, I used to think that knowing people to move ahead in life was just something peculiar to Nigeria. But I found that here is even more a prerequisite. Because for many people, it's someone who just puts in a word for you, and that's it. It's not about paper certification. It's about relationships. Who do you know? Who can say something for you? So what you should spend your time doing when you come is building new networks. I talked about professional networks and all that. Thankfully, we're in a place here where the financial burden of being out of employment, the society has safety nets around it. It might not be you will receive an income. It may not be so much, but it will be just enough to keep you afloat until you get work. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So there are safety nets, So there are resources around you. Use them. But if you stay indoors, which is my same thing I was still saying before about isolating oneself, you would think the situation is worse than it is. And it's not. I have met so many immigrants here doing very well now who told me that they landed here and spent a year plus and they didn't get employment, and they kept employing and applying, and nobody was calling them, or they get to the last stage of the interview and they are not, they don't go beyond that point, but they kept trying. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So in coping with these things, it's understanding that this is temporary, but what can I do? I need to meet people. You need those kind of things. And then also, you also need to, of course, if the first community that you feel comfortable is community of people who are like you, why not still interact with them? But what I'm trying to say is that you need superior information. And a lot of times, the people here know how those things work.
Right.
Right. So, for me, those are the things. I know that a lot of times people are always waiting to hear something very grandiose and novel. But for me, go back to the basics. The basics of planting. No matter how scientific the discoveries are about food, the seed must enter the ground. Whether it's a genetically modified seed, it must still go back to the basic principles of agriculture. That is the same way it is with life. There's no new, there might be new ways we might describe things, but it still boils down to the basics, about, building mental resilience. You've taken a huge step to leave your comfort zone and come to a new country, So whatever challenges you're facing are temporary. Speak to people that are in that, fear. You see, fear and timidity, it prevents us from doing a lot of things. If only you can just decide to put yourself forward. Like Emeka will always say in his podcast that nobody's going to notice what you're doing if you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I realized that it takes a lot of guts to be, because, there's a tendency to want to minimize, to look humble. But that principle doesn't work here. So knowing the principles that work in a particular place will give you the results that you need.
That's right.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Different principles work for different places. What are the principles that work in the province that you're going to? You know, I look at some people, then when you're even planning, setting your goals, go on LinkedIn and see the career path of people who have the destination that, life is all about hitting the bullseye. That bullseye is your ultimate destination. But how to get there is full of details. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But if you know where you want to go, you start working backwards and then start charting your way to that place. People will come and ask me sometimes, how do I know my purpose in life, or how do I know where I want to be? And I personally think, after spending many years trying to figure out what exactly is my purpose, I find out that it is the sum total of the things that you are doing every day. Do you know that it is all designed to lead you to your purpose? And even you who's doing what you're doing, it's the same thing. You might have a vague idea,
Right.
but it's the sum total of those things. A lot of people don't know that they're already on the journey of their lives. A lot of people don't understand that the difficulties that they are going through as immigrants is so that tomorrow, who knows whether you might be able to build a business out of the particular adversity you faced, unique to you in this your own journey. The lady who has this business in Saskatchewan for, what she call it? This she does when people land in Saskatchewan, she is a settlement business. She will pick you up, take you around, help you with your registration and all of those things. She has her own specific story about why she found a need in that space, and she's solving that problem now and is bringing her revenue. So we can profit from every situation, no matter how adverse. It's just a perspective, But what you don't know, you don't know. And that's why I'm saying that you must reach out. So if you're a new person in Canada, find a community of people to give you information. And most importantly, try and make friends with the people, try and get yourself into communities with people who, let me use quote and unquote for want lack of better description, the sons of the soil. It makes a lot of difference. It makes a lot of difference. When I started attending CBA, a lot of people I have met today, even in my profession, and people of weight and quantum in the legal profession here, is because I took it on myself to go out to CBA, even when I didn't feel, and someone saw me, and then from having small talk and conversation, the person opened up, because people are interested in immigrants. Oh yes, they are. But if we're hiding, nobody will know. If we're hiding, nobody will see you. We have our own peculiar struggles, but these are just the things. But you will never know beyond what you don't know. What you don't know is what you don't know, and it is only by interacting with other people that you can, get knowledge. Get knowledge. Get knowledge. There are financial advisors, even in the get knowledge. When you go online, there are resources, to help you with your financial structure and planning and all. These are very organized countries that have lots of information online that people can actually, get. But we're not using those things. And, it's I hope that we can actually, do better. I don't know if I answered that question well, but I'm answering it from how I have been able to address my own unique challenges as someone looking for articling. And then even lastly, when I was looking for my articling position, so articling is one of the most difficult phases. Anybody doing their NCAs, foreign lawyer, will tell you that passing the exam is the easiest part of the journey. Finding an articling position is the real deal. And that thing has taken people to many rural areas. People have left it's a big headache. And for many provinces, you must article before you can become a lawyer. I personally was thinking about, how do I solve this problem? I applied at big firm I worked, and it didn't take me. I started thinking of new ways to solve this problem. And I just said to myself, you know what? I'm going to apply again. I just had this idea. Apply again for any job that advertises for legal assistant, any firm that advertises for legal assistant. But when you get there, tell them, renegotiate, turn the conversation around. I said, So I called a friend of mine. My husband was there, and I told him, I was like, it sounds like a good idea. I called a friend of mine and I told her. She was like, no, don't try it. Which is that thing you were telling where I'm talking about external pressure factors. But deep inside of me, I just said, no, I know myself. If anybody listens to me, I'm going to sell myself. Let me try it.
Hmm.
Because the same amount of energy it takes you to believe is the same amount of energy it takes you to doubt. So where are you going to channel that energy?
Hmm.
You can be wallowing in doubt and self-pity, this thing, or you can do it while you're afraid and just be courageous. And that's it. Why? Open your mouth and ask for what you want. That is how nature responds to us, by opening our mouth and asking and demanding for the things we want. And so I applied, and this firm calls me, and I got there, and they made me an offer to work. And I said that, see. And I changed the conversation. And I said to them that I hope to article along the line. I don't mind taking a job if there will be this, but this is the reason why I think that you should consider what I'm saying. I'm not interested in how long I work as an assistant, but this is what I'm looking for. But this is the value I will bring to your organization. And I said, but I've been preparing for this time. I didn't just show up. This is something, coupled with the fact that I know who I am, I know my abilities and my skills, and I was able to put all of those things together in a cohesive argument and present it. And then the rest is history, as they say, So, and people still ask me, how did you get in Saskatchewan in particular, where it's almost impossible to find? But that's how it happened. So call it luck, but it's a combination of different things.
Different things.
I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yeah, I mean, there was something came to my mind when you're talking about sharing just recently, and I think it's important that I state this, that we have to get to the point where we get a reward from our pain, and because the pain we go through, oftentimes people just ignore it, and they probably have gotten over that pain and they're in a good place, but they don't get a reward from their pain. And how you get a reward from your pain is oftentimes by sharing the stories of that pain. Yes. And sharing the process by which you were able to go through that pain, and oftentimes you begin to see the result trickle in, and the result could be the reward could be opportunities open up for you because of what you went through. I mean, a good example, if you look at the scriptures, there was the case of Joseph. At every point of the trials he faced, he got reward for it. Like, he was able to tell the story of where he was and how that phase was able to help him navigate this new phase. So a lot of times people hide their pain and they feel like I shouldn't share it, or it's something not to talk about. But oftentimes there's a reward for it. Now, that reward might not just be a personal reward. It could even trickle to even your family or trickle to other people. But people must get to the point where they realize that this pain, there's a reward in it. And I want to just share that. But I want to ask, how were you able to, how are you and your spouse, your husband, able to go through that together? What I've seen a lot of times is adversity oftentimes shakes the foundation of relationships. People, either financial adversity, different adversity shakes the relationship, and people, call it quits. People, do a lot of things. But how were you? Because it blew my mind when you told me about, the event that happened, the tragedy that happened, how you were still, number one, sane. I did, there's a thing that we're talking now. I don't think we've spoken in detail about that event when you first told me, because I didn't know how to present it, but it blew my mind of how you were sane, number one. And number two, how do you navigate that phase together? I mean, you mentioned something that was very profound, how your spouse, your husband, was in the same wavelength and mindset as you, and it was easy. But tell me, I mean, there were times where it probably was tough and all. How were you able to now? Because I mean, it could help someone who is going through that phase where they're going through tough times, from the wife or the husband, and things are tough, and they're shaking the relationship, the foundation of the marriage, and all of that. How were you able? Because for me, whenever I talk about, someone's asking me that personal growth and all, it's not about career alone. It's about, I believe the personal growth is holistic. It has to cover across not just career, but family, and in the financial and all of that. But let's talk about family. How were you guys were able to put it all together? if I may ask?
Okay, so good question, and thanks for asking that. So the scriptures tell us that can two work together except they agree? Early in our marriage, my husband and I, I told you, you respond to life's issues from your values.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the values of our marriage is that our love is a commitment to each other, and it has nothing to do with the way we feel. And so we're married for we got married in 2009. Our son died in 2018. So that's 9 years of constantly practicing how to be committed to one another, irrespective of all the things that have been happening. So we had gone through bouts of sickness, to health challenges that could have broken us, but we stood together. Whether we felt like or we didn't feel like, we were always there for each other. And I found that as long as we were saying the right things to each other, even if I wasn't feeling the feelings always caught up with me. We went through periods where my husband lost his employment, those difficult years. So, but we were, in spite of me not feeling like, I was always focused on the fact that I'm committed to this person, whether he's employed or whether he's not. My father said to me when I brought my husband to him, he said, Ada, this guy that you are raving about, if I strip him of everything that makes him him, and I give you only the carcass, will you still take it? And I was about to rush and ask my father, I said, don't answer that question. Just go and think about your life. Think about it. And that question has remained in my mind. So when things are looking like they are taken away, I ask myself, Ada, what you married was the person, not the add-ons. This is someone I committed to do life with. It has nothing to do with how I feel. And so it looked like all of this pressure was culminating to son passing away. Bearing in mind that I was the one who took the child to that other person's house. But my husband never said to me for one day, why did you do it? It's your fault. The kind of words we exchange, because we have been making a practice over the years of responding to each other from the places of value. I told you the choice of your words will choose the consequences. If he started saying to me like it was your fault, you did it, where will it lead us? It will lead us to confusion, to anger, to bitterness, resentment, and it will break the family marriage, because he will constantly be looking at me and pointing fingers and saying that it was your fault. Meanwhile, it wasn't my fault. So how did we go through those things? It is the sum total of issues we've had and how we've resolved our issues over the years that helped us at that time. What do you think that they did? Why do you enter people's offices and you see them mounting all their plaques? So they receive awards, you mount it. You receive, you mount. What do you think that thing does? Why do you think God always told the children of Israel, every time you have a victory, put a memorial there? So that you can remember that if I brought you out of that storm or trial, I will bring you out. Those are memorials. We had memorials in our family of difficult situations that we had overcome. And so we said, this one is not enough to drown this marriage. The Bible says that many waters cannot quench love. Because it's not, like I said, it's not whether the storm, it's when the storm comes. The house that is built on the rock will stand. The one that was built on sand will fail. The foundation of our marriage was love as a commitment, agape love, love that has nothing to do with the way we feel. See, I am not saying that when I married him, of course, my butterflies were flying out of my ear. And in fact, now I even wonder whether I even loved my husband as much then as I love him now, because the love has gotten sweeter as the years have gone. But like I'm saying, we didn't respond to that issue by the way we felt. There were some days I know he had questions, but the ability for him to restrain himself. And then another thing that helped us go through that was, apart from the commitment to each other, was the fact that we were friends. We were compatible. Spiritual compatibility. We're friends. We had a conversation. A lot of people think that marriage is about marrying your friend. If you marry someone that isn't your friend, I don't know what else you are doing, because you find out that you spend more time in the living room discussing issues than even in a bedroom in the Zaoza room. You know, that is the fact. So who do you turn to in terms of crisis? It's usually your friends. Ask any lady, she will call her friend. Do you know what my husband said to me? Because that's how we are. You look for your friends when you're in trouble. If your spouse is your friend, then it is easy for you to unburden. And so both of us were able to talk about the issues and we're able to hold each other. And one of the things my husband did was like, Ada, I am going to be strong for you. I am going to hold you. He owns the situation. You know, it was a tough time. And then of course we held each other up in prayer. I will pray for him and I'll be like, Lord, please strengthen this man. He also would pray for me, Lord, strengthen this girl. You see, marriage is for two givers and two sacrificers. When the two people that are married are constantly trying to outdo each other in love, you're going to have bliss. But if everybody is looking out only for their own, you know, not exercising self-control. Like I said, the words that you say to each other matter. But he never for one day blamed me for what happened. Rather, he will speak words of comfort to me. Ada, I know it wasn't your fault. Don't worry, we will come through this thing together. We will laugh again. Don't worry, we will. You know, that was how we kept the positive journey. So it helped us, you know. And then also presenting a united front. No, you know, you get what I'm trying to say. So those were some of the practical things that helped us in getting through this time, and that's how it's been for us, you know, over the years.
Wow. Well, this has been a very a very in-depth conversation. I mean, I know I have to go listen to this again. That's how much I value I've gotten from this. Before we wrap things up, I usually ask my guests final 3 questions. These questions you can answer it in a word, and you can elaborate or expatiate on the word. And it's just random questions. Number 1, the first question there is: if you go back 5 years, 5 years ago, let's say 5 years ago, what would you have changed, or what were the things you had to change to become the person that you are today? So 5 years ago, what did you have to change to become the person that you are today?
That's the difficult question. I think I had to change my perspective I think, what did I have to change? I think I had to change my perspective towards responding to accepting. I think let me put it this way. I think what I changed was what would I have changed? Maybe the way Emeka, that's a tough question.
I know it's usually a tough one.
What would I have changed?
I mean, if and maybe it might not be so much of a big change. It might just be, like you said, perspective. It could be perspective on how you approached navigating as the workplace. It could be anything, right? So I'll leave that. Let's go to the next question. So
no, let me answer that. I think I won't have really changed anything per se, but I think it was just more of my perspective towards issues and just understanding that everything good will come. Yeah.
Every good thing will come. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. The second question is what if you had to highlight three routines that you had to adopt in the last 10 years that has helped you improve you as a person, in terms of your personal growth? What were the 3 things you say that have become a routine that you do to help you become better?
Routine number 1, consistency, waking up at 5:30 every morning. It has changed my life. As a person like me who tends to be on the more disorganized spectrum of life, just waking up at 5:30 just has been a game changer for me. The second thing that routine that I will say has helped me is intermittent fasting. discipline in my diet and what I eat,
Hmm.
or rather the timing in which I eat. So IF is a discussion for another. I'm not a medical practitioner, but just eating a 16, fasting 16 hours and eating in an 8-hour window has changed, has been revolutionary for me. And then the third thing that I will say that has helped me and is a routine for me is my walk with God. That time in the morning when I pray and all that, and it has helped me maintain a life of journaling. I can track all my progress since 2009 till date because of that consistent prayer life. Every January, my husband and I sit down to write our goals for the year. Since 2009, and we brought the book here in Canada, and this is almost our 5th year here, and we are still writing. So I can trace all the plans my family made since I married him till today. And I can say confident, I think with the exception of two things, every other thing has happened. So it allows me to not complain about my life because it allows me to see how much progress I have made. So those 3 things have been it for me. Waking up at 5:30, intermittent fasting, and my prayer life that has resulted in keeping a proper journal because I always write every time I finish praying from the things that I feel come into my spirit.
Wow, that's powerful. I think journaling. I practice journaling. I know waking up 5:30.
Well, I don't even have a
I'm
choice.
trying.
Like, as a woman, I have to wake up.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. Oh, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But good. I mean, good routine there too. I think it's really, really important because they touch on very key areas of our life, which is health and and a mental state and being able to achieve more. So okay, final question is I like books and I often take,
How did I know you're going to ask me that?
and part of the way to collect books and recommendations of books is through this podcast. I know it's selfish, but I know it's to help other people to also get books, from this podcast. So what would you say is your favorite book of all time that has made a huge impact in your life?
Emeka, that one is a difficult question. Favorite book? I don't have a favorite book.
I know.
But I'll tell you 2 authors whose
Okay.
books have changed my life.
Right.
Or I will tell you 2 books that I think stand out in all my readings. 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. It's a must read. And Developing the Leader Within You by John Maxwell. I think those 2 books.
I think I've read that. No, I haven't read Developing Leaders Within You for John C. Maxwell, but I've read something close to that for John C. Maxwell. So that's a good one. And
John Maxwell has many.
Any book from John C.
books.
Maxwell on leadership is powerful. So great recommendation. Thank you for sharing that. Ada, it's been amazing having this conversation with you. I think it's been a long time coming, and I know there are other conversations that would come out of this. And I hope that when we invite you next on the podcast, that you'll be available for us. But before you go, I would like you to share, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. But how can we connect with you if our audience is trying to get in touch with you? Maybe they have questions or just want to relate and connect with you. What is the best way to connect with you? Social media.
Yeah, I think the best way to connect with me really would be on LinkedIn. I find I respond to questions faster. Even I must confess, I'm not the most. I don't post often, but I know we fight about it all the time, Emeka. But yes, it's just me. Anyway, LinkedIn is a good place, and then Instagram. So I will send you my LinkedIn and my Instagram handles, but I think LinkedIn is my place of preference because I will always see the messages
okay
faster than I'll see the ones on Instagram. Yeah.
All right, definitely we'll put that in the link there for folks to connect with you. I know you also mentioned something that you're working on. Hopefully that comes up. I think it's something that's going to be very impactful from the little things you've shared about what you're cooking, what you're working on. I know that platform is going to be very helpful. So hopefully in the next when next we invite you, probably have launched that, and we'll get to talk a little bit more about that. But
About it.
yeah, Ada, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any final words you'd like to share?
Well, my final word will be a proverb. And it's just something that is a mantra for my life. We must mind in the beginning the things that matter in the end.
Let me stop to think about that a little bit. We must mind in the beginning the things that matter in the
Things that matter in the end.
end.
Let that be your life's a mission. Is it a vision or a mission? Let that be something that you put before you every time you're doing anything. Mind in the beginning what will matter at the end. What's the consequence of this choice I'm making?
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's profound. Thank you for sharing that. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast. For those of us who are going to be watching this on YouTube, please let us know what you think about our conversation today. What resonates with you the most on today's conversation with Ada? Drop a chat in the YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe as well. If you listen on Apple Podcast, we've found that a lot of people listen on Apple, but they haven't yet followed. So please follow the podcast. Also leave a review. We would like to hear from you. Until we come your way next in the next episode. Remember that your growth is personal. No one is going to do your growing for you but you. All right. Have a good day.